Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Friday Forum City Club. This afternoon, our program will feature the new arts directors. And for those of you who are City Club aficionados, you may have attended a program about a year ago in which we had 4 of the departing arts directors. So now we will have the next chapter in the Portland arts experience. Today, we will have, we have now at the moment on stage, Alice McCartor, who will be our moderator. We have Christopher Stowell, who's with the Oregon Ballet Theater. We have Chris Mattaliano, who's with the Oregon Symphony, and we're waiting for Carlos Kalmar. Did I do something wrong already? Oh, he's with the opera. I knew that, because I thought it was appropriate. I thought it was appropriate that we should have an Italian who would be the head of the opera. So, yeah, I knew that. I was just testing you guys to see if you were paying attention to me yet. Anyway, Carlos is finishing up at with a rehearsal at the Symphony, and we expect him to come in with tails flying, looking very dramatic. So we have left his chair vacant, and we will proceed. But before we get started, we have the usual City Club announcements, and I'd like to talk about next Friday's program, which is a very serious program and very timely. It's entitled Neighborhoods in the Crossfire, and the sub is Portland Trigger Happy? Renee Mitchell, who many of you probably know as a columnist for the Oregonian, will be the moderator for that panel, which will consist of John Kanda, who's executive director of the Northeast Coalition of Neighborhoods, LaShanta Jones, who is a teenager, she's a voice from the middle of it all, and Portland Police Officer Michael Stradley of the Northeast Precinct. Should be a very interesting program. In May this month, the Citizens Read Book Club program is reading Ray Oldenburg's book called The Great Good Place. Because of the Memorial Day holiday, we won't be meeting on the last Monday of the month. We'll be meeting instead at the Zimmerman Community Center on June 2nd. Now we have a couple of very special City Club programs this summer. The first is a series of 10 fundraising dinners for the club, and we're calling them Citizens Salons. And we will have a guest provocateur who is, I call him the talent, who will be attending each of the dinner parties and will stimulate a discussion about a topic of that particular guest's expertise. Those seats are filling up rather quickly, and they should be extremely interesting and lively, good food, good discussion. So if you're interested, there are brochures in the back, and all of this information is available at the City Club website, or you can just call the City Club office. Now, our After Hours series is returning this summer. For those of you who may recall, we had an Architects After Hours, and we had Portland Products After Hours. We had the Portland Arts After Hours, where we got to visit behind the scenes of all of the major arts organizations. This summer, we're having something called True to the Food, which looks at the quality, equity, and the economics of our food supply. It's probably going to be more fun than that sounds like, because it's going to be at a special, it's going to be at some special food-related venues around the city. And there will be a variety of food perspectives, and it will be accompanied by seasonal hors d'oeuvres, wine, and good discussion. Now, those programs can only accommodate 75 people. So again, if you're interested, please go online or call the City Club's office. Is this Carlos? Aha! I wish we had the proper music to accompany your approach. Oh, that's good, that's good. Ladies and gentlemen, Carlos Kalmar. Hi, nice to meet you. We have 2 weeks left in the City Club's membership drive, and if you've been thinking about joining, this is the time, because each week we've had a raffle for new members that week, and this time we have a drawing for 2 tickets to Masters and Moderns, courtesy of the Oregon Ballet Theater. So that should be a really good incentive to join this week. Membership brochures may or may not be on the tables, but they will be on the back as you leave. Or again, for further information, call the City Club office. The broadcast of City Club programs today is made possible in part by corporate underwriting from Pacificare, Portland General Electric, and Zimmer Gunsel Frasca, for whom we are very grateful. You also can get a copy of today's program on an audio CD or a videotape from the club office. Now, finally to our program. Today's moderator is Alice McCartor, who is a program officer for the Meyer Memorial Trust. That trust provides foundation funding for Oregon and Southwest Washington organizations. Now, Alice is a person you want to get to know because she consults with applicants and reviews proposals and makes recommendations to the trustees. Prior to joining the trust in 1992, she was director of the Washington County Health and Human Services Department, where she helped create nonprofit programs for adults with mental illness and for low-income pregnant women. I will now turn the program over to Alice.
So you see my background leads directly to the arts, right? I'm going to skip through introductions fairly quickly because I want to get to the meat of today and get to the conversations with our three guests. And to formally introduce them would take me the entire meeting. They have richly deep artistic backgrounds that are cross-continents. So rather than introduce them in a formal way, I'm going to tell you a bit of personal information about each of the three so we can create an informal tone and you can get to know them a little bit better. Carlos, our most recent addition, was born in Uruguay of Austrian parents. At the age of 6, he took up the violin, and by age 15, he was studying conducting at the Vienna Academy of Music. All of you who have 20-plus-year-olds who are still wandering the desert wondering what they're doing with their life, take note. He's led numerous orchestras in Europe and in the United States as both artistic director and as guest conductor, and he is now learning to manage a bicontinental household with his wife and his 2 daughters in Vienna and here. One of Carlos's earliest experiences in Oregon reminds me of how small and familiar our state is and how broad the reach of our major arts organizations is. Before he even took up the baton with the symphony, he and his family, his wife and 2 children, were traveling along the Oregon coast. And in a quilt shop in Bandon, he got discovered. The owner of the quilt shop said, "I recognize you. You're the director of the symphony." It turns out that that was Carlos's first face-to-face meeting with a seasoned subscriber. And yes, it happened in Bandon. And to my immediate left, Christopher Stowell. Christopher was born in New York City and grew up in Europe and in the United States. He comes to us most recently from San Francisco, where he was the principal dancer and a frequent choreographer with the San Francisco Ballet. After his training in New York, he joined the ballet at age 19, and within 1 year became its principal dancer. So that's quite a feat. Dance runs in Christopher's blood. His parents, now co-artistic directors of the Pacific Northwest Ballet in Seattle, were dancing under the direction of George Balanchine with the New York City Ballet when Christopher was born. In those days, it was unusual for dancers to have children during their dance careers. I understand that when Christopher's mother asked Mr. Balanchine to come home to see the baby, Christopher received his first review from the great Balanchine. In a gruff, Russian-accented voice, "Not so bad." Christopher Mattaliano, also known as Chris, so we won't get confused, grew up in a boisterous Italian working-class family across the river from New York in Jersey City. As a high schooler, he played the French horn, and he got intrigued by the orchestral versions of the operatic music that his high school symphony was playing. He asked his brother's college roommate, who he knew to be an opera buff, to tell him about opera. Fortunately for us, this young man did one better, and he took Chris to the opera on his 16th birthday, to the Met. I think life was never quite the same for Chris. He turned around, bought tickets for the next night's opera, And I don't think he ever looked back. He says, "I wasn't hooked, I was seized." These early years in Jersey City and visits to the Met fused in Chris that combination of passion and a concrete earthiness that I think you'll see in Chris as you get to know him better. Chris's career as an opera director has taken him around the world, but he's no stranger to Portland. In the 10 years before we captured Chris here for the opera, he guest directed 5 very popular operas in Portland, and he and his wife began to love the city. Now he and his wife, soprano Pamela South, and their daughter Ava live here. So these are our guests. Please enjoy them. On taking their new positions, our 3 guests immediately instituted something, a dynamic that was new to performing arts organizations in Portland. They began to meet together. I think Chris told me coffee every other week, every other Friday morning. Just a first and a delightful first because they have become great collaborators and friends. So as a prelude to our question and answer, what I'd ask each of you to do is to briefly talk about your vision for your company. Briefly, I mean no more than 5 minutes. And you see that little clock I have there? Talk about your vision for your company. What will we see that's new? Christopher, would you like to start?
Is this on? Yeah. I get asked this question frequently, and I have to say I'm always concerned that my answer is both obvious and not very thrilling, because my vision for this company in a single statement is to create a major classical ballet company here in Portland, in a city that I think deserves it, and I certainly hope desires it. More interesting is how one goes about that and what a major classical ballet company is. To my mind, I would like this company to be recognized on a national level, to make an impact on our art form in this country and maybe even beyond. And it has, it currently has and will continue to have, and hopefully further arms to it, not only a performing company that is known for the breadth and quality of the works that we present on the stage, but also the breadth, I was going to say the breadth and quality of the dancers. I actually don't want them to be wide. How about diversity and quality of the dancers? And that we will be known that whatever we do is always of the highest quality. And one feature of putting on really high quality performances is performing to live music. And that is one of my first sort of items that I'm getting really adamant about, and it's already created a monster in a way, but it's a monster that I'm happy to have on board. It's very expensive for us, but it is absolutely vital to what we do. And it also has created a reaction in our public, a positive one, that I'm very happy about. The other arms of the organization are, like I said, very important. Unlike, unfortunately, I'm going to single us out, other major arts organizations, we have a pre-professional school. We train the dancers that we want to have in our company. And well, let's see, we have about maybe 185 kids in the school now, which is considerably larger than it was a year ago, which I'm very proud of. And obviously, not all of these kids are going to become dancers. However, the new director of the school, Damara Bennett, who I hired to come with me here last summer, she and I both feel the same way, that although they're not going to all be dancers, we want them to be the next generation of not only informed and enthusiastic ballet lovers and supporters, but also to take with them some obvious things like a sense of discipline and being able to commit to something, but also having sort of a tool to coping with life. In that they have something that is part of them that they can fall back on, that the arts represent some kind of humanity to them, and it's a prism to look at life through, and that when you learn that early and it becomes important to you early, I really think it is a source of comfort to have later on. So the school is very, very important to us, and it's part of the ballet tradition in that you're continually working on the next generation. Unfortunately, ballet dancers don't last that long. 20-year career is pretty long. I only lasted 16. So we need to keep feeding our company, and we want to give back to the community. And another way of giving back to the community is our outreach program. We serve not only, I think, over 20,000 kids in a year, but also have extensive adult programs too. Everything from lecture series to actually teaching adults the rudiments of classical ballet, if that's what they want, or other forms of dance. Essentially, I would like OBT to be a really vital part of this community, and for this community to be really proud of having a major arts organization, a major ballet institution, and that it can rank nationally on that level.
Thank you very much. Portland is a great city. It has a great opera company. I would say in a nutshell, my job, my vision is to take the opera company to the next level. I was certainly very thrilled to accept this position and to come here. Portland Opera in particular enjoys a very, very good reputation within the profession, and that's something that I've learned perhaps the city is not all that aware of. The opera profession is a relatively small profession, and this is really a destination town for artists in the opera profession, so I was quite thrilled to come here and be part of building on what already was an excellent opera company. It's an exciting time for us. We've sold out our entire season this year, and we've finished the past 6 years in the black. We've balanced our budget for 6 years, and so I've had many good things, very solid things to build upon as the new general director here. Having a home has made a big difference, and that gives me something else to build upon. We purchased a building in the southeast that has really enhanced our operations and consolidated all of our efforts between our rehearsal hall, our costume shop, our administrative offices all being in the same roof, and that's had a very, very positive effect on our organization. As far as the new era that's before us, Chris mentioned the word quality. Yes, quality above all else would be something I would like people to associate with the Portland Opera. I would like audiences to feel that they're taken seriously when they come to the opera, and by that I mean even if it's an opera they don't particularly know or necessarily like, that they'll leave the opera house feeling that, my God, that was done well. My goodness, what attention to detail. I was taken very seriously as an audience member, and certainly I know when I go to the Portland Opera that there'll be enormous attention to all matters in terms of quality. There's a saying I live by, which is God is in the details. I tend to be a very detail-oriented artist, and therefore the work I do in producing opera is with enormous attention to detail. There's another saying I live by called generality is the enemy of all art. I believe it was Stanislavski that said that. And I think what he meant by that was that art needs to have a point of view. I want opera in Portland to be something that has a very definite point of view. It's something that is challenging, is energizing, is invigorating. I would like those things to be associated with the Portland Opera. I'd like to establish a young artist program here within the next few years where we become a center, not unlike the ballet company, where people come and train and become part of an ensemble and are in the school system. I'd like to see a new theater here. I would like that to be part of my legacy, that we have a new opera house within the next 10 years. The other key part of my vision for this company is to have an ongoing dialogue with the community, to build a bridge back to the greater Portland community, one in which we're getting feedback from our supporters and our audience members. We've instituted a 6:30 rush ticket this year, so that at 6:30 you show your student ID or your senior citizen ID or your military ID, and any ticket that's available you get for $10. So that means students can have a date for $20 and go to the opera. Very important to me that we find ways to reach out to you. What's that? We're instituting a brown bag lunch series next year, where every month it's going to be the first Thursday afternoon. We're going to ride the coattails of First Thursdays a little bit. First Thursday afternoon at a place to be determined in downtown Portland. You bring your brown bag lunch and you attend a presentation from the Portland Opera. It's our way of on an ongoing basis, staying connected with the community. I've started a visual arts series at our building where local artists get to exhibit their artwork. And I want very much to expand our outreach and education program so that we're reaching even more students. We currently reach about 16,000 students throughout all of Oregon with our outreach tour of an opera each year. And we reach about 4,000 students at our student dress rehearsals, of which we had last night for the Barber of Seville. So getting out into the school system has become something that's fallen on all of our shoulders to fill that gap that is missing in our education system right now to make sure children are exposed to art. I want very much to be viewed as a business partner in this community, as someone who is investing in the community and cares very deeply about its economy and its profile and its image as a great arts center. These are the type of things that I dream about and that I often lose sleep about. But it's an opera business, and one needs to dream big in the opera field.
Thank you, Chris. Carlos?
Well, let's just start with the pretty obvious. I think that everybody here in the room will agree with me that we want to have a great orchestra, and that we all want to have an orchestra which at any given time plays in the Premier League. So my vision would be, together with my wonderful musicians, to make that happen. And I also have a very strong supporting staff who provide the tools to make that happen. It's a procedure that takes a couple of years, and obviously you are going to hear in regards to things that I envision for the future of the Oregon Symphony. There has to be some mentioning in, we should continue recording, of course. We should think very seriously within the next couple of seasons about touring, starting maybe as an idea on the West Coast, then covering the entire nation here in America, and maybe one day to dream about doing a tour abroad. For me, the important message that I have to tell you on this occasion is, for me, these are things that might be obvious and that you might question where is the difference to anybody else, and what does it say to me personally? Because it's pretty obvious that somebody who works internationally as a conductor wants to make a big and a great orchestra happen. We don't even need to talk about. But there is something which for me is priority number one, because there is, I think, a very broad aspect into that. And that is, my vision is, within the next couple of seasons, to touch everybody, every Oregonian's soul by the work that we do. And I think that is the way I understand this, is just because I try always to figure out how does communication between audience, community leaders, businessmen, and us work. And the best thing we can do, and that's why I mentioned touch the soul, is to have something in common. The thing that we have to have in common is just to be moved. For me, it's absolutely not enough, and I have not really done my job. If you come to one of our concerts or participate in one of our programs, and then you go home and you say, oh, they are playing nice, and you just forget about us. I want somehow that, and obviously not every single program we have or not every single concert is even designed to do exactly the same, but I want you to remember us and to say, you know, I felt something very, very, very special in the occasion I went to see Oregon Symphony, or I was moved to tears, or oh my God, I have discovered something new in my life. It's something that you might remember. How we are going to do that, it's, well, I would say it goes towards quality, yes. It goes towards program design. It goes towards the trust of every single Oregonian in not only our quality, but also in regards to what exactly are we going to present. So please come and join us even if you don't know the program, because we are going to present something to do to you that you really can appreciate. On top of that, because it's so important for me as a human being, goes that the entire educational program we are doing. Because, matter of fact, you cannot touch everybody's soul here in the country or somewhere else if we don't focus on the education. And I think Oregon Symphony has a large program of, we go into schools, we have kids concert, we play in very different venues on very different occasions. Sometimes it's 5 musicians, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's only 1. On top of that, I want to mention that each year we have a community partnership. Matter of fact, I just happened to discover Central Oregon. I was in Redmond last week, wonderful part of Oregon, by the way. And I mention this because you may imagine, I was thinking the other day together with my new president, Bill Ryberg, why do we call ourselves Oregon Symphony? We could say we are Portland Philharmonic Orchestra, sounds nice. But the reason is that we want to have an impact in this big state on everybody. And you may imagine that, okay, what kind of impact may you have if you just visit a city once every 2 years? And I will tell you, well, probably we are not doing our job. So we are looking into that, and by having this community partnership, like Redmond, others will come next year and the year after. We provide something, it's not one visit we pay to that community and surrounding area, it's over 100, sometimes even more, and the impact for the future will really be there. But the real message is participate, come to see us, and we go to your place and we want to touch your soul.
Thank you, Carlos. I'm interested in each of your early impressions about the art community here in Portland. Carlos, you mentioned in one of your online journals that the artistic talent here is deep. So I'm curious, what surprised and delighted you, each of you, with your vision of Portland?
If I can start? Sorry, guys.
Just talk quickly.
Well, I was really surprised about Portland, to tell you the truth, because to tell you something about myself, some 5 years ago, I had to put Portland on the map. In regards to Portland, where is that? You know, I'm very European at that time, so I'm learning. So in regards to what did I assume was here, I was surprised, and it still is for me striking, because to be honest with you, I don't even have the time to look at every single arts organization there is in town, and I would love if the day would have more than only 24 hours, because 22 of them I'm working. Just to mention, wonderful ballet, Bodyvox, Whitebird, just to mention other ballet companies. There are many in town. The opera is doing great. What is else to be said than if, like Chris just said, you sell out the season? I would say to him, well, let's think about, you have to think, it's not my call, about an additional show maybe. I think we all know here there is so much going on in chamber music. Third Angle, wonderful group. Many of the musicians of Oregon Symphony are playing there. Chamber Music Northwest, fantastic organization. There is theater, big companies, Chris Coleman's company. There are smaller companies. And in regards to people I have met and where they are really linked to here, I remember that, for example, it was an easy and pretty obvious thing to just invite a wonderful pianist like Susan Smith to our front row concert. It was an obvious thing to participate with a wonderful actor who works with Chris Coleman. He was doing wonderful. Scott Coopwood is his name. And by the way, just to mention two other things, is you know when one of your things you have to do with your orchestra at the highest level is you want to invite children as soloists, and you might think, okay, we'll survive this. Here in Portland and in Oregon, it was not the case. I had two wonderful soloists, very, very, very young kids, Andy and Karsten, who played with me at the Mozart concert. It was wonderful. So the level there of the kids is fantastic, and we have great teachers. And last but not least, I wouldn't say I do that in my spare time, but even in this room there might be some aficionado like myself. When I was younger, I used to play the violin. So whenever there is time, which is about 3 times a year, I join a group of what I would say, well, none of them really works in music business, but we are forming a small group of chamber music, and because all of us are, let's say, over 25, we call ourselves the Rusties. So much going on.
Chris and Christopher, what surprised you in first impressions?
Well, nothing really surprised me. I've been coming to this city for the past 20 years as a guest artist, and I'm married to a soprano who's been singing with this opera company that was engaged by my predecessor on a regular basis. And so I fell in love with Portland many, many years ago. Artists love coming here. Artists love coming to the city. They certainly love coming to the opera company because I'd like to say we treat them very well. We give them the conditions in which they can do great work. But the city treats them very well. And by that I mean the city is very open, accommodating. It's genuine in its spirit. And I was quite impressed by the atmosphere here that enables artists to do good work, and it's something that the city should embrace about itself. And I love the fact that the city is so kind in many ways. Having a 12-year-old in the school system here, seeing the effect that it's had on my daughter and her getting acclimated here, I would say the same thing is true for the artists that come here and for the arts groups that thrive here, is that the city is a wonderfully supportive and aesthetically very beautiful place to live and to create art. And that's really the bottom line. That's the business we're in. We're in the business of creating art.
Well, ditto what Larry and Mo here said. Two specific surprises for me. One is I didn't expect, of course I'm thrilled that it's true, but I didn't expect there to be such a hunger and interest in what the arts organizations are doing, sometimes even without information or a background in the particular art form, but still a real interest and hunger for seeing new things, whether they're brand new or new to this community. That has been a delight for me, and has opened my imagination or allowed it to flow in what we do at the ballet. And the other is that the spirit of collaboration that is, I don't know if it was always here, it certainly is now, with not just the three of us, but particularly the three of us, all having started at the same time and seeing very clearly the opportunity for working together and not having histories to conflict with our organizations working together, and also actually liking each other is a big help.
Thank you. Well, now I want to turn to the challenges, because all of you are trying to produce art in a state that has very little public funding for the arts. And what challenges have you faced as arts producers here in Portland?
Of course, I mean, the obvious answer is finding some sort of financial stability, but that's, in my opinion, that's too easy an answer and too easy a response. Yes, of course, we need to find a way to become sustainable as organizations as best we can. There's no question that there is support in this town, and it's a matter of understanding how to find support, literally and figuratively. I would say from a perception standpoint, what I find challenging are really two things. One is the image of arts organizations that still exists as being charitable organizations. Isn't it nice we have all these charitable organizations here in Portland, where really we are service organizations. We provide a service for Portland and the greater Portland area. We provide a service by the people we employ. I employ over 120 local residents at the opera company. We, in a typical year, put back $2 million back into the local economy through our performances and bringing people downtown that shop and put gas in their car and take public transportation and eat at restaurants and go to restaurants and bars after the theater and use parking lots. So we are very much an organization, and I'm sure I speak for my colleagues, that continue to battle is perhaps too strong a word, with the image of being charitable organizations. We're your business partners. We're providing a service for the city that's very, very valuable in many senses of the word. I also, and I've mentioned this when we spoke at this breakfast a few months ago, I was a bit surprised when I moved here to find something similar to living in New Jersey, being born and raised in New Jersey. Believe it or not, there's something similar. And that is, growing up in New Jersey always had this inferiority complex about being nestled between New York and Philadelphia. And I do find that Portland, I was very surprised, because my image of the city was always this thriving, great city, that Portland seems to have a bit of a shadow of Seattle that it deals with, or perhaps of San Francisco. And I do find it challenging to address that. Like, how do we embrace ourselves as a great city, uniquely beautiful in its own terms, with its own unique character that is uniquely ours, and that should have a thriving art scene, and should have an opera house and a ballet theater and a symphony hall that are the envy of Seattle and of San Francisco, and that there's kind of a blissful ignorance that I think the three of us share about moving here, because we don't bring any preconceived images as to who we are as Portlanders now. And I think we all feel that, well, why not? Why not have the best art scene in the United States? Because we're Portlanders, not because we're trying to imitate or emulate any other city, because we are a very uniquely rich and beautiful city in our own right.
I would definitely echo what Chris has been saying. Two things that jump out at me are the funding situation is obvious, and although I agree with you about us not being charitable organizations, I also think that we need to all accept that we're nonprofit and that there is no scenario when suddenly we don't need help. That's just the way it's going to be. And the inferiority complex, I was also a little bit surprised to sense a little bit of that. The ballet is sort of in a unique position in that we are, I'm happy to say, we are among the major arts organizations, but we are much smaller with a much shorter history. And one thing that we're battling a little bit is just to catch up in that respect, whether it's on the support side or just on the awareness side. It's actually interesting, a quick history lesson. Ballet on the West Coast actually started here. A man named Willem Christensen trained dancers and started a company here, I think in the 40s, I'm not positive. He then became the director of the San Francisco Ballet and later Ballet West in Salt Lake City. The first ballerina he created here became the first director of Pacific Northwest Ballet in Seattle. My father studied with Willem in Salt Lake, and my mother studied with his two brothers in San Francisco. Now, there is a lineage gap in there a little bit. Traditions and aesthetics went different ways over the years, but I feel like that reconnecting with that initial, the roots of ballet here is an important step for the company to do, and it's just going to take us a little time. So that's a small challenge, but one that I actually took on knowingly. I had not been offered a major ballet company, but the idea, where I wanted to work was here, because not only is this a beautiful city, but also it has, it requires, needs, desires, deserves a major company, and it had all the foundation necessary to create it. But I can hopefully feel responsible for creating that major ballet company rather than becoming a curator for an existing one.
Thank you. It's time for us to open the floor to questions. We're going to get instructions, I think.
May I just very briefly, sometimes if I work hard, I can be very brief. Because in regards to the challenges, there is something I want to mention here, not only to echo the two Chris's, and that is, if we all understand that we are raising the bar, and we are raising the bar very high in regards to the level at which we are able to offer you whatever we do in Oregon Symphony, I think that all of a sudden, everybody's expectation, including, by the way, our own, is going to be way higher. And I consider it a challenge to just maintain the very, very high level. So whenever we had something like a very good concert and the audience loved us and we had a great time all together in the hall, I think about next day and I think, well, top that again. And on the side of that, not because I don't want to repeat that, but I think it's so wonderful what Chris just said about let's be inclusive. Of course, you all know that money is a challenge, but let's please understand together in regards to business leaders and corporate that by our existence, we are giving also a tool to you because we make this city attractive. So whenever you think about being a partner is the real word, remember that.
I think that we'd like to hear this discussion go on just as it is for a long time, but one of the privileges of City Club membership is the opportunity to interact with our guest speakers. And I would like to remind you that the question should be asked in 30 seconds or less, and the mic is right here. And today our board host, who has the privilege of asking the first question, is Guinevere Milius. She is a partner in the firm of Stevie and Milius Identity Management, that's marketing and graphics art firm, and she is also a co-chair of the New Leaders Program.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Carlene, and thanks to our speakers. I think my fellow audience members will agree that we have a lot to look forward to from the three of you. I was glad to hear that you all have very ambitious and deep checklists for your organizations, and I think very rarely do we ask our arts leaders to also weigh in on public policy and and basically broader interest in the community. I think that's happening more in Portland. We're recognizing the role of arts and the health of the community as a whole. So I'm hoping that you can weigh in a little bit on that today and provide us with your checklists for what Portland should be doing, either to support the arts but also to improve the city in general.
Checklist to improve the city.
I'll try and tackle that. Well, if part of what you're asking is what the city can do, all of us run a slight risk in our public perception, our relationship with Portland and the greater Portland area. If we're the only ones that are saying the arts are great, the arts are good for this community, the arts serve a purpose here. So I would say, in a very simple term, as I say to my staff on a regular basis, you need to spread the word, you need to spread the gospel, you need to be the acolytes that go out into the world and say yes, so that the community is not only hearing it from us, because there's always the danger that your voice becomes less effective over time. There's no question that would be very helpful. If any business organizations or civic groups can sponsor groups coming to a concert of ours or an event of ours, that will help us reach out to our next audience. My demographic are women in their mid-50s. And I say to my board on a regular basis, where is our next audience coming from? So if any members of this community can sponsor a class of kids, which a number of us did last night at our dress rehearsal, to attend the opera, to attend the ballet or the symphony, to attend the theater, or to go to an art museum here. In a way, you're planting seeds for the future. Those are two ideas off the top of my head.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I think the most important word for me in regards to what can Portlanders, Oregonians do is participate. I know, matter of fact, the arts in which we are in might also be regarded as elite. It's only designed for distinguished members of community, whoever there are, and I think that is absolutely not true. And I think if there would be a barrier, so you're kind of thinking, oh, I don't know whether I can even go to a concert because I might not understand what the music is about. I tell you, occasionally I even understand the music, and trust me, you can come and you have to have no knowledge whatsoever about what we are doing. Just participate. And the other thought that I have is, in regards to support, in regards to fund any of our programs, or just supporting us by buying subscription or single tickets, please don't think about that in regards to you're doing it for us so that we can survive. That's not the point. You are doing it for yourself, because then by providing us the funds so we can do what we want to do, we are doing something for you, because when later you join us at any given circumstances, concert, education, whatsoever, you're going to have this momentum where we all in the room share something.
Oh, she's gone. I was looking for her. Lack of funding for education is a big hot topic around here, and I know all three of our organizations do what we can to supplement children's education, particularly in the arts. This is not exactly answering the question, but it's been on my mind. We can only do so much. I have a little beef with parents who don't take the ball. Once we have taken kids, bust them in, and brought them to a performance at the ballet, if they go home and say, I saw the ballet today, that was interesting, you need to take your children. The ball has to continue rolling from there, and it's not expensive to go to the ballet, the opera, or the symphony. And I think all of us, for better or for worse, are very, very influenced by our parents, and I think that needs to be a significant portion of children's influence.
I'm glad to see we have some questions because this is a unique opportunity to speak with these people. So if any of you who are members would like to line up here, if we have some time remaining, then we'll go back to having Alice ask the questions and continue the discussion.
6 or 7 more.
Nikki Lynch, member. My question is, so you touched on this somewhat, but I'm interested in your vision for the facilities. I know, we're also proud of our Performing Arts Center and blah, blah, blah. But I hear, the theaters having a new venue, and what do you see that would your dream venue be?
May I?
No. Chris starts. Chris starts.
Oh, okay. Studies have shown that there was this key weighting report that was done here a few years ago, but it's typical of many studies that show part of the reason that businesses relocate to any city. One of the first things they look for, major corporations looking for a place to lay roots, is the quality of life, and what is the environment that their employees will enjoy as a result of moving there. There's no question that Portland offers many things, but I've heard since I've been here on a regular basis that we're losing businesses downtown and that we're losing corporations. So there's no question that having a major arts facility and having a thriving arts scene is very attractive to people that are looking to relocate and invest in that community. So from a purely practical reason, we need a new theater here, in addition to it providing jobs for local people and a place where great art can take place. The Keller Auditorium clearly was designed to be a large venue for large events. Certain of my operas work fine there. Most of them don't. Mozart and Rossini were not meant to be performed in theaters larger than 1,800 seats or 1,600 seats. And so I do feel my audience is missing part of the experience of a great performance of The Marriage of Figaro by seeing it at the Keller, with all due respect to the Keller. Clearly, studies have shown from PCPA that we have an overwhelming need for another theater space in this city because we're operating at 110% capacity. And the ideal answer would be to create at least one more theater for the major arts organizations. One could go on and on about the positive impact of a new theater coming to Portland, but I think the city itself, this does go back a little bit to my comments before, has to embrace itself as a major arts organization. And I want very much to encourage all of us to do that.
Carlo, oops, sorry.
I'm not allowed.
I'm going to be brief. I'll confess, one of the many things that keeps me up at nights, I could call you probably at 4 o'clock in the morning, is the fear that instilled by the lack of performing venues here. I don't feel, totally honestly, I don't feel secure with our dates far into the future so that we can expand our organization, so I can guarantee the dancers a certain number of work weeks, so I can start hiring choreographers, possibly musicians, designers, dancers, to perform in 4 years if I'm not positive if we have these dates. I'm being very specific now. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It would be fabulous to have another venue. It's a necessity for this organization. But there are practical reasons immediately beyond the fantasy of a beautiful theater.
I think that we have the Schnitz, as we all know, for Oregon Symphony, but the Schnitz is a wonderful hall. And I think it's also a historic building, but it has some challenges, such as, just to name two, if you come to this weekend's performance of Mahler's Second, you are going to see that some of the seating area is missing because we had to extend the stage because, well, It just happens to be that Mahler II requires around 250 people on stage. It's pretty large. So the stage is just not big enough. But that's not the important thing. The important thing, and we are really looking into that, is the acoustical environment in which we work. It is not ideal. That's the bad news. The good news is that we are definitely committed to the Schnitz for at least the next 10 years. And the very good news is that we are currently, together with PCPA, looking into the possibilities of doing something for the acoustics, meaning we have already ordered studies, some of them came back, of internationally renowned acoustic firms. So my thinking is based on the assumption that something will happen with the Schnitz in the future.
Thank you.
Carol Witherell, thank you so much for coming. This is a challenge back to ourselves as a community, but we can use your help. It takes a real hunger for a community to commit to building its future audiences, its future performers, choreographers, and conductors. How do we raise the bar in and restore our arts educational offerings in our schools to prepare for this future?
Wow, that's, it's a great question. As Christopher said before, we can't do it all ourselves in terms of the educational system. We need to be, I think Portland's very fortunate in that it has arts leaders that are very, very committed to getting into the school system and exposing young kids to the arts. I'd like to think of myself as a poster child for what happens when you're exposed to the arts as a child. I come from a working class, blue-collar family in central New Jersey, and I fell in love with classical music fairly early because someone took me to a concert, and it changed my life. I'd like to think the kids that were at our dress rehearsal last night, some of them might have their lives changed as a result of that. When I was in Michigan, I ran an arts festival there before I came here. We established the fund. The interest went to a yearly scholarship to a graduating high school student in the area that was going into one of the related arts. That's a program I hope to initiate here. I think enormous pressure falls on all of us as arts leaders while the state dealing with its economic problems and while the city dealing with with its problems searches for answers, that I think the answer falls on all of us to do what we can to make sure children are exposed to the arts, especially at this time because they're getting so many other things. Having a 12-year-old myself, I see how difficult it is with all the noise out there and all the options they have that are trying to get their attention to say, this is Beethoven, or this is Mozart, this is a great dancer. It's something that is very challenging, but I think it's vitally important for all of us.
To tell you the truth, I don't think that we have, talking substantially raise the bar of the level of education, because that would tell, at least in my understanding, it would tell immediately that we don't have great teachers. I think we have great teachers. In Oregon, I have talked to many of them, and they are really stunning, and they do great work. For me, and I can't tell you how serious I'm about this, is the message out there has to be to every single father and mother is, please expose your children to arts forms, especially I would even say to music, and I would say, I'm very sorry for having to say this, please do it to classical music. It's plainly and simple, and we don't have the time to discuss this, but studies show the positive effect on the brain of any individual if they are exposed to classical music. Trust me, it's not enough for every Oregonian if you send your kids once a year to visit the ballet or the opera or the symphony. Expose them to music at home. In other words, it might be better for all of us if instead of turning on the TV, the radio will do.
I've been armed by our outreach manager with so many facts about the breadth and diversity of our outreach program, but I'm not going to go into that. I guess it's just to reiterate, we're doing so much already. One thing that comes to mind is that, and it's sort of reflective of what you're saying, Carlos, is that I don't know if people see the full value of the performing arts, live performing arts, that there are artists that have been training their whole lives right in front of you. This is not even a film of an opera or a ballet or the symphony. No, this is the real thing. Something could go wrong, and people are expressing themselves right there in front of you. And having grown up in a family of artists and spent most of my childhood in Europe, this is, I suppose I'm coming from a naive point of view, it is inconceivable to me to not have arts be a major part of your everyday life. You eat and you go to the theater sometimes, because the idea is that what you see on stage reflects our human experience in some way. And I'm going to keep stressing this live thing, because movies and TV, that's fine, but they can do it again. We can't. You're seeing the real thing.
Well, unfortunately, we're at the end of our broadcast time, and I think we could go on for a long time, but I suspect you all have a great many things that you have to do, unless you would like to stay for a little while. Did you have the opportunity?
I think I already have a ticket, so it's fine.
Well, if we weren't a nonprofit, I'd offer to pay for it, but maybe we could have just some brief questions and then wrap it up within another 10 minutes.